Hello.
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 Hi there.
Hello and welcome to a very special midweek edition of the Football Times podcast with myself, RadioTimes.com sport editor Michael Potts. And today I'm joined by a very, very special guest. Not because he's my boss or anything, but this is RadioTimes.com digital editor Mr. Timothy Glanfield.
Hello, Michael. It's such a pleasure to be on the show. Long time listener, first time caller,
Yeah,
as
that's
they
it.
say.
Read the script.
Well, thanks for that wonderful introduction and hello, listeners.
It's a big entry. We'll be rounding up all of the games in the Premier League this week. We have 10 games to be played between Tuesday and Thursday, all on Amazon Prime. A bit of a new venture for the Premier League. I guess before we take a look at each of the games coming up, this is a pretty big shift for the Premier League.
It's a big shift. The Amazon coming in and buying up 2 sets of games is very, very different to how things have worked. Football, obviously, since the inception of the Premier League, most people would associate with Sky Sports. They pretty much had the rights most of the way through. There was a period about 10, 15 years ago where there started being other people getting a little bit, another package, because it's sold in packages. And so obviously you had Setanta, who the Irish broadcaster, and then a little bit before that, NTL had some pay-per-view stuff, and then you moved into the era of BT Sport. So it was shared between them. When the Premier League sold their rights for this season and the next 2 seasons, they brought in a couple of smaller packages, which were for 2 sets of 10 games. The one that we're just about to enter into was bought up by Amazon. They've got another set on Boxing Day, so they've got all 10 games from that kind of match day. And BT Sport actually got the other one. So BT Sport have got a similar thing going on.
New Year's Day games,
New Year's Day. So all of those are going to be broadcast as well. So it's a big change. So it now means that football fans not only need Sky Sports and BT Sport, but they also need Amazon if they want to watch all the Premier League games.
Well, you think BT have carved out quite a nice little thing for themselves? Sort of, then you're going to get like that morning game on a Saturday each week. You're going to get Champions League stuff each week. But I guess Amazon trying to wade in, find their place, and if it's for now, if it's just the showpiece games, the Christmas ones, if Boxing Day can become their thing, it's quite a bit of a masterstroke from them.
Well, I think it is. I think the Premier League like this because ultimately they want the money to go up, right? In sports broadcasting, it's in their interest for there to be competition between people going for the rights. I think from Amazon's point of view, if you look at it, it's a test, right? They've got it for 3 years. This same thing's happening for the next 2 seasons after this one. I think the way that they see it is, it's December's great for them. It's the biggest month of the year for sure. What is for many a shopping site, right? Obviously, they do lots of other stuff. They do video, they do audio, they do music, they do photo storage, they do everything, right? Yeah. But ultimately, for many, they're a shopping site. What better way of attracting people in the run-up to Christmas than saying, well, you get a 30-day free trial, right? Get your 30-day free trial, you get 2 lots of football, so you get these ones in the Boxing Day games, plus you can do all your Christmas shopping with us, and you can try out the service. Obviously, they'll be hoping that people stick with them. So it feels like a bit of it feels like a good gamble for them. But I think what's really interesting is what's going to happen in 3 years. What happens when the rights come up again? Because if this goes well for Amazon, I think you could see a very different picture for football fans.
Yeah, you could start to see people like Facebook, Twitter. It just opens up the whole online only world, I think. If this takes off, and I think the thing that, because we talk about things like Netflix and Disney Plus and all that sort of stuff coming up. The thing that maybe sets Amazon apart is that most people probably already have Amazon Prime, or a lot of people will have Amazon Prime, and so this isn't a sort of a whole new thing for thousands of people. Like, this is something they already have, and being able to have another 20 Premier League games for free, it's a pretty good deal for fans as well as, let's say, Amazon, who are trying to get into this market.
Well, I think for Amazon, I think with any subscription service like this, churn is an issue. So getting people to stay is a big thing. Yeah. So people may subscribe, they do their Christmas shopping because they want the next day delivery, and then they're off. So I think actually stuff like this, the more stuff like this they put in their calendar, the more likely people are to stay as well. Because if they start getting sports broadcasting, well, if you're a fan of a certain team, a couple of games are going to be on there. Plus you do your Christmas shopping and get your next day delivery. Plus, also, you've got to remember what Amazon are doing. There's this kind of documentary strand to what they're doing with sport as well. So you're now seeing, you know, I'm a Spurs fan. We'll talk about Spurs later.
Are you really?
But, you know, they've just announced that they're making the Spurs behind the scenes, and I know they've done one for Sunderland for you already.
Oh, man. Thanks.
The agony. But what's interesting is they're making sport documentary content. They're buying the rights to football. They're sort of augmenting. They sort of come together quite nicely. And at the same time, they're buying up tennis. You're seeing the sports rights there. So there's all these different reasons to sort of hang on to them. So for them, I think it's a really interesting strategy. What it does in 3 years, I think if it's a success, you might see Sky and BT really being challenged by these streamers for the rights, and you might see the rights all over the place because I think they'll go the highest bidder, right?
Yeah, and I guess a lot of this as well, you think about the practicalities of this. So we've already looked at the list of presenters and commentators and everything. It's more than 40 people are going to be working.
10 games almost all at the same time.
It's unbelievable. Like, we've never seen this before. Like, even Sky, for as great as they are with bringing live coverage, they've never hosted 10 games.
I'm surprised you're not one of the pundits, to be honest.
I mean, where was my offer, guys? You know, see you next year.
You're right, it changes things, doesn't it?
It really, I mean, that's such a logistical challenge, having sort of 3 or 4 people across 10 games. And that's before you get the actual technical, the producers, et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be fascinating to see how and whether this actually works. But
I'm sure it'll be I think it's going to be a really interesting time. I guess what's really interesting about it is what does it mean for football fans ongoing? You know, it's already really expensive to watch Premier League football. Yeah. It's just got more expensive in a way because if you want to watch your team, you're going to have this new service. Okay, you can get a free trial, but is that the future of football? Is it going to get more? Are there going to be more and more services where you have to subscribe to more and more stuff? And I think that's the bit that, as a consumer, people are going to watch with interest.
Absolutely. If you would like any more information on how to watch these games, we have our guide on radiotimes.com/sport, and that can bring you up to date with basically how you actually get the thing to work. there's a lot of options, so you don't have to sit around crowded around a tiny laptop screen. You can stream it straight to your TV. Should we go into some football now, Mr. Glanfield?
Go on then.
Let's go for it. Tuesday, 3rd of December, we have Crystal Palace versus Bournemouth. That's a 7:30 kickoff. Palace, they've been on a bit of a tricky run recently with some pretty tricky fixtures. Good win over Burnley, and they'll hope to get something against Bournemouth, who they could find themselves in real trouble coming up to Christmas if they can't get any points here. They've got Chelsea and Liverpool coming up.
Yeah, and it's a surprise next. Bournemouth, started pretty well. They've frankly, they've got some good players. They've played some pretty good games, but they just haven't seemed to come together. This season.
Once Callum Wilson, the goals seem to have dried up with Callum Wilson a little bit, and Josh King, and I think once you see those two start to drop off, and I know King's injured, you just wonder whether they have enough consistent goal scorers. I think Harry Wilson doing all right. But yeah,
he scored a beautiful free kick against Spurs at the weekend.
He scored some lovely goals as Harry Wilson. But yeah, we'll see about that one. I think Palace will really see that as a chance to pick up points, get back into the top half.
It's the old 11th versus 12th game there.
It's a massive one, like when I was in Prime.
Aren't they all, Michael?
Second, on Tuesday night, we have Burnley versus Man City. That's an 8:15 kickoff.
All the times are different, aren't they? Slightly different.
Slightly different. 7:30 seems to be the standard.
Right.
But then
the occasional 8:15 just to throw you.
The cheeky 8:15 just to put it in there.
You can watch the first half of one of them and then, watch the first half of another, maybe the end of the second half. It feels like you could
almost
flick
if
around.
Somebody's thought about this. City have wobbled again. Another draw against Newcastle. I think the most telling sign of a struggle is that nobody really reacted that strongly to it.
No, it feels like, last season it was all, Man City, Liverpool, and actually for a bit Spurs. I'll keep bringing them up, but obviously that fell away pretty quickly. But this season it does. Now it feels like people are talking about Leicester as the only sort of challenge to Liverpool, and they have just lost or drawn too many games to feel like they're challenging for the title, in my opinion. It just feels like it isn't a surprise. Like you say, it's like, Man City lose or they get a draw or they drop points again. And it's like, And you look at the table and it's starting to be reflected. 11 points behind Liverpool after 14 games. That ain't looking good,
It's not ideal, is it? And like you say, Leicester, you mentioned them there. We'll come to them soon. But Leicester in such relentless form, where City, you just don't really they've got so many attackers to fear, but at the back, you really think you can get at them. With Company obviously gone and Laporte still a couple of months away from coming.
That's
back.
right, and always a tricky game away at Burnley, I think.
Very much.
You could see them dropping points again, couldn't you?
They're quite an all or nothing team, Burnley. I think the last 4 games they've won 2 like sort of 3-0 wins, and then they've lost 3-0 and 2-0, and it's just kind of like which Burnley's going to. I don't know. It's like Dyche has thought, you know what, we're going to sack off half of the games. We're going to only win half of these games. You know,
Amazon should make a documentary called All or Nothing Burnley. They made it about the wrong teams.
That was an unintentional plug for All or Nothing there. All or Nothing Burnley.
It's like a sponsored podcast.
8 episodes of Sean Dyche's voice. I'm up for that. Amazon, get on it. Moving on to Wednesday night, we have Chelsea versus Aston Villa. That is a 7:30 kickoff. A couple of defeats for Chelsea, which we're not used to saying that on this podcast.
But, 2 in a row.
Yeah, 2 in a row. Man City and West Ham. Not the worst result, losing to Man City, obviously.
Losing to West Ham, they wouldn't have expected.
West Ham's not a fun one.
Not this season.
Tammy Abraham out. He could be back for this one. He's a bit of a 50-50 to face Villa.
They're definitely missing Tammy in the last few.
He's one of those where he can pull out that match winner out of not a lot.
It's that creativity, isn't it? And it feels like they're a bit flat.
I think we just need that person to lead the line. They've got so many attacking midfielders there: Willian, Hudson-Odoi, Pulisic. It's just that sort of focal point, maybe.
The sort of Chelsea story this season, I think everyone at the beginning, people were like not sure, and then suddenly came good, exploded, and then fourth in the table. Look like they're really starting to become one of those teams that should be in the Champions League places again. But then this couple of losses in a row, and you start thinking, what's going to happen?
And it's not the easiest game at Stamford Bridge. They've got Aston Villa, who I feel like Villa, they haven't always turned performances into points. I think they've looked all right. Jack Grealish has been excellent in recent weeks.
Definitely.
Even if they don't get the points, they always tend to. I think the Liverpool game just recently, like they deserved something out of that. I think Spurs at the start of the season, I watched that one, and again, a bit hard done by to lose that one. So they could be a bit of a thorn for Chelsea.
Yeah, definitely, and they're coming off the back of a really hard-fought draw at Old Trafford, which has got to give you confidence. Yeah. And like you said, they've got some great players. I think that they're in good form. I think that Chelsea may struggle.
Absolutely. At the same time, it's a 7:30 kickoff. We have Leicester versus Watford. Bit of a tale of two halves here, or two very opposite ends of the table.
Very much so.
You have Leicester, just relentless winning mentality. Watford, relentless losing mentality. Leicester,
including their manager.
Leicester, yeah, for sure, who takes some effort to be sacked by Watford twice. But there we go. Kike Sanchez-Flores, take a bow.
Oh, you almost feel sorry for him, really.
I know.
Like less than, was it 12 games or something?
Yeah, he got, I think it was 85 days.
85 days.
85 days, and that's it.
It's not enough, is it? It doesn't feel like
I've lasted longer here.
Will you get to the end of the podcast, though?
Who knows, dear listeners. Jamie Vardy scored 6 games in a row. He's going for that record that he set himself.
I mean, he's just looking amazing.
Phenomenal.
I mean, it's just he's just on a different level at the moment. Yeah. And how old is he? Was he 33?
I want to say 32.
Yeah, 33. And he's just. It feels like he's had a renaissance. It's just like a different. It's almost like a come to a different level. He's playing the best football he's ever played.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you just
such a shame.
Goals every time.
Yeah, it's such a shame actually going into the Euros, especially with England hoping to do something that he has sort of called time in his international career. Yeah, I wonder whether Southgate
feels a bit premature, doesn't it?
Could have a little phone call if he because he could very easily get 25, 30
Premier League
goals
top goal scorer. You want them in your side if they're available, and I don't see why he's not, apart from ruling himself out. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, we have Southampton versus Norwich, also a 7:30 kickoff. Big relegation scrap. Love that.
A really big one, and Norwich had a funny old season, haven't they? Because they've pulled off these really great results. Beating Man City. They got a draw at the weekend against Arsenal. Probably should have. Probably should have. Well, at the moment, probably not so much. But
a disappointing draw against Arsenal.
Probably should have won that game. But they've got some results against some big teams. But then they've just and Pukki's been amazing. And at the beginning of the season, he was in everyone's fantasy teams. He scored all those goals.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of all seemed to go a bit
But it was when Pukki stopped scoring.
Yeah,
that's
he
when it
stopped
sort of fell
scoring,
apart,
and then the whole thing just stopped happening for him. And there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel with that draw against Arsenal. They did play well. Yeah. And you just think, I don't think they're going to go down. I think Norwich will. I think they'll find a way out. And
you see Cantwell and Pukki back in form, and they're their two main guys, obviously going forward. I think Hernandez got a bit of pace about him. Bundia came off the bench, looks like a decent player. Interesting, Southampton and Norwich, both teams, both down there with attacking managers. They haven't really changed their style. They're just they're playing their own philosophies, whether that's foolish or wise to stick to what you know. But they're both going to try and score the way out of this one.
You think so? And Southampton, I think there should be some goals in this game. Southampton coming off a victory against Watford, but that's not saying a great deal with the way that Watford have been this season. Yeah. But a win's a win after you've lost 9-0. After that, do you think if they can bounce back and win any games, that would be good? It's going to be close, that one, but I would think that's going to be a Norwich win.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on, we have Wolves versus West Ham. That's also a 7:30 kickoff on Wednesday. Wolves going along very well in the Premier League and in Europe. They've made it through to the knockout rounds of the Europa League while also sitting 6th in the Premier League. That's some feat by
it's
Nuno
brilliant. It's great.
Santos.
And it's just one of those great stories, isn't it? It's just nice to see. I mean, obviously Wolves are a team with great history and a great support, but it's just nice. It's nice to see a team that isn't one of the traditional big six or whatever you might call them, and I know that they sort of change every now and again who they are, but certainly Wolves isn't one of the names you hear mentioned in that group, and it's just really nice to see them doing so well in the league, in Europe. It's just I don't want to say this really, but it's a bit like a fairy tale seeing it. Seeing a team like that with with a really solid support, just doing really, really well in everything that they're playing in, and they're playing fun football as well. They're playing interesting footballs that people are enjoying watching.
Yeah, absolutely. West Ham as well, who I guess going into this one last week, you would have thought, would Pellegrini be still in charge? But looks like he saved his job with that win over Chelsea.
Well, I think winning a London derby helps, right? But it does feel like West Ham have got to do something pretty special this season to dig themselves out the hole they've got themselves into. Yeah. At the back, they're just not looking great.
It's so bizarre, West Ham, because we, throughout these weeks on this podcast, we've been looking at them and thinking that this looked like, this is the year for West Ham. They've had a few windows of big spending. They've signed some big players. Anderson cost 42 million, I think, for an example, but they've just not quite been able to gel together as a team. No. They're a team of very good players without actually being, the team. And I guess when you go down that route of signing the best players available, not necessarily the best team available, you're always going to be liable to that, hot patches of form, cold patches of form. And that's exactly what they've gone through. They tore it up at the start of the year. They've dropped massively since, been free fall.
Yeah, because when they started, you were thinking West Ham, going to do pretty well this season.
Haller flying up front. You had Yarmolenko chipping in with goals. And I guess it's just trying to find some sort of mid-ground. Like, it's okay to draw a game, it's okay to grind out a point in some games.
Well, I wonder if they get a boost from the Chelsea result, and if that's the turning point they need in their season.
For sure.
Because they definitely need something, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of sides who have enjoyed a turning point in their season.
Here we go.
Are you ready for this one? It's 7:30 on Wednesday. It's probably the pick of the bunch, you would think. It's Manchester United versus Tottenham. It's Jose Mourinho returning to Old Trafford.
That's going to be a special atmosphere for the special one, you would think.
Oh, he's mentioned special one. You're not coming back. It's a spicy one. So it could be some iconic scenes here. You just feel like something big is going to go down in this game, and I can't.
Well,
quite
indeed,
put my
and you
finger
remember.
on what.
And it feels like Mourinho as well. He's since coming back, he's sort of slightly he's become this humbler, sort of more reflective version of who he once was, and you can't help but think he may also be aware of the fact that the Amazon cameras are following Spurs around this season, making a documentary, and there's already been quite a lot of stuff going on that looks like it would make good footage for that. Like the ball boy incident, and having him in for dinner and high fiving with him and stuff. I think it's going to be a really, really good atmosphere, and I think that it'll probably get quite a good reception from the Man United fans.
Yeah, there was no real sort of animosity, I think, at the end. It was more, it definitely seemed to be between Woodward and him, particularly, rather than, the fans. I think the fans appreciated that he was doing what he could with bit of a flimsy
Indeed, it feels like
them.
their ire is kind of directed more towards the kind of the upper management of the club rather than to him. So I think he'll have a good reception, and great football heritage obviously at Old Trafford, and they respect people who've won a lot of stuff and done a lot, and obviously he has. As the Spurs manager, it's not quite as we were expecting, I guess, at the moment. He's come in, a reputation for playing football that gets results and then shuts down. And what are our results since he's come in? We've won 3-2, 4-2 and 3-2.
Yeah.
So that's probably not the results that people would have predicted.
Yes,
but we've had 3 wins, so we'll take them.
He's not particularly the neutral's favourite when it comes to entertaining football, but he certainly showed it so far, whether that's, through his doing or... And
the way he just seems to have transformed Dele Alli by just saying, I think that you're not your brother, are you?
Yeah. I command you to be good.
I command you to play world-class football immediately. And he has. So, I wish he'd do that magic spell on more of the players. I think it's coming, hopefully.
Next up, Christian Eriksen, Yes, Christian Eriksen will be the star of my team.
You don't want to leave the club. You want to play.
Yeah, you do want to sign a new deal on half the wage.
It's been an interesting time as a Spurs fan, because obviously Pochettino was very, very well liked and took us on a huge journey over the last 5 years, from being from that sort of mid-table mediocrity to getting to the Champions League final, to being in the Champions League every season for the last 4 years, becoming solidifying our place as a top 4 side, which I've been watching Spurs since I was a teenager, which is a long time ago, and to even dream of finishing in the top 4 would just be crazy. So I think it's been it's a funny old time with him leaving, but it looks like we've turned a bit of a corner. You always get a bit of a bounce, but it feels like there's some positivity again. Maybe it's a new energy that some of the players needed.
Yeah, I think sometimes you get a bounce from any old manager, but this is a bounce from Jose Mourinho, who is more than just any old manager. And if you can bring that old, I guess, the underdog Jose back, the one that sort of stole everybody's hearts at Chelsea.
Well, indeed, he's got Dele Alli playing well as well. He's got Sissoko scoring goals, which is the first one in a century, I think. But there's a lot going on there.
Kane up and flying as well.
Son and Kane, just get them connecting up again, and suddenly I think you have got I think we've got a really exciting team going forward. I think our problem, as with some of the other teams we discussed, is the leaking the goals, because in all of these games we're going ahead, and then not the Olympiacos one, but the 2 league games, going 3-0 up and then almost drawing that's something that was happening under Pochettino. So that's the bit that's got to change, I think.
Yeah, and I guess United, you could say similar. They've scored 13 and 5 now, but they can't defend either.
Well, they're coming off the back of a 2-2 draw against Villa, a 3-3 draw against Sheffield United. Losing to
Kazakhstan,
Astana, is it? I mean, it's not necessarily, I think it feels like the Wednesday night game's going to have goals, right? If it hasn't got goals, something's gone wrong.
For sure.
The wrong
and that's
team's
not what we would
up.
say usually about a Mourinho side. A Mourinho team in a big game is usually a 1-0 grind out and settle for it win. But
and I agree with you.
You do think this is kind of out of his control.
It's out of his control. There's going to be goals. It's going to be a slightly strange atmosphere, I guess, because you've got Solskjaer under pressure as well. And, there's the rumours that Pochettino might go to Man United, whether or not that's true. But there's so much going on. It feels like there's a lot riding on this game. They're basically neck and neck in the league now, and it's between Man United and Spurs, probably going with Chelsea going for that 4th Champions League spot. So there's a lot riding on this game.
Yeah, draw doesn't really do much for either side.
Draw doesn't really help anyone. Both teams will want to win, want to really start putting the pressure on Chelsea, and also prove. You've got 2 managers trying to prove themselves. One new to the club, won 3 in a row, wants to win 4, and what a place to do it. And the other one under pressure, coming off the back of a load of bad results. Everyone's saying, is he up to it?
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of football to play there.
Yeah, absolutely. And one final point on this, we could get to see Jose Mourinho drop kick the VAR. So, we can't guarantee this. Your free trial may not cover Mourinho drop kick incidents, but if ever there was a game he was going to do that, it's probably his first one with VAR. Moving from one seismic game to another, we have a Merseyside derby for you. It's an 8:15 kickoff, so you can watch the first half of Man United Spurs,
then watch
over
at least the first 15 minutes.
Wonderful.
Of the Merseyside derby.
If it doesn't take your fancy,
and watch the second half.
Go back, And then when you see Southampton Norwich, 5-all draw at half time, you flick onto that. The whole country flicks over to that. Merseyside derby, again, can Everton get anything out of this?
Well, I mean,
it's not going to happen.
Traditionally, the Merseyside derby is quite an exciting game. Often it's produced some great games over the years. You'd expect it to be an eventful affair, but the way that Liverpool are playing this season and the way that Everton are playing, you can only really see one result, right? I mean, it's at Anfield as well, which makes it even more of a mountain to climb for Everton.
With Liverpool, they're not. It depends what you mean by form, because I think like form, they're in great form in one sense, that they're picking up wins after wins after wins. They've won 13 of 14 so far and drawn the other one. And yet this is probably some of the weakest actual displays they've put in a long time under Klopp. So it's a weird balance what they've got going on. But I guess when Salah doesn't turn up, when Firmino doesn't turn up, when Mane doesn't turn up, the fact that you still got Alexander-Arnold whipping crosses in and Van Dijk to do his magic with them, it's just relentless winning.
And that's the sign of a champion, right? That's a team. They're not playing particularly well, really, by their own very, very high standards, but they're winning every game still. They're finding a way out. They're grinding out those results, however they have to. I
said this before, but I think that they're almost, if they win this title, they're going to be winning it playing like an Alex Ferguson side. It's not all about the pretty football all the time, but just that never stopping. And if it's a 94th minute goal, so be it. That's still 3 points in the bag, and 3 points that I don't think Man City can. I don't used to grinding
it doesn't
out.
Feel like this season that Man City have got that in them, and they're already a long way behind. It feels like Leicester are playing amazingly, but can they really keep going at that pace all the way through?
We said this in 2016.
We said it before. But maybe they can, but they're all they've still got some catching up to do. It means Liverpool, it's all in their own hands now. The destiny's in their own hands. They've got to slip up quite a few times to allow someone else to come in, and that other team has got to be just as relentless in the wins. And maybe it will happen. It's not even Christmas yet.
I was going to say, you think Christmas, this is where it's so important. Liverpool have about 8 games. I think it is mad over Christmas.
Well, they've got the World Champions Cup as well. Champions League is still playing.
So I think if they can get through this, then I mean it's a it's a steady hill down to the finish line. But if they drop one, if they lose one of these games, that could very easily turn into two defeats. Could turn into 3 defeats.
It's about momentum, isn't
it? I know momentum's a word that's sort of bandied around. What does it mean? But there is a thing in that, and there is confidence and just turning up, winning those games and leaving. That is a mentality.
And they're so desperate to win the league, right?
Yeah.
And last season they were so close and they played so well and got so many points. And if they hadn't have been for an extraordinary Man City performance, they would have won the league in any other year, playing the way they've done with the points they got. So that can always weigh heavy on you when you get into the run-in. Because you're so desperate to win it. Is that when you take your eye off the ball?
Yeah, for sure. And Everton in this one, Marco Silva, it's not really... Cause I feel like he's been on his last game...
quite a while now.
For about 10 games now. It's not a great one which could determine your future. I mean, it's a bit of a write-off, and I think the fixtures don't get any easier after this. You wonder whether... I mean, is there any hope for them? You wonder whether he can just deliver that team talk of a lifetime, get everybody so fired up. And you see what Leicester did the other day against Everton. They got that goal. They played very well the other day against Leicester. Sidibe looked good. Davies looked good. Sigurdsson better. Iwobi looked good. Looked very lively and mobile. And you do just wonder if they can get some sort of freak goal earlier on, whether that would be enough to rock Liverpool. I still think Liverpool are obviously the heavy favourites here, but if there's a game for Everton players to turn up, stand up and be counted, I mean, this is surely it.
I agree. If they're, I do feel for Everton a little. I mean, I feel like they're putting some really good performances this season, and it's just not coming together for them. Like you say, the game against Leicester at the weekend, they played really well. And Davis and Sigurdsson in the midfield they kept the Leicester midfield really quiet, which this season's unusual.
Yeah, it's very hard to do.
And you just think I agree, if they can come out for that big occasion, it's their FA Cup final. I know that's a cliche, but it is. This is a huge game for them. If they come out and do something early, maybe there's a chance they could put an upset in there. But you just think with the way Liverpool are playing this season, I don't think it's going to happen. And the other, how long has Silva got left? Well, do you fire someone after losing the Merseyside derby? I don't know. I mean, you made a point before we were talking in the office about the fact that, are they almost waiting?
Yeah.
It feels like you don't want to bring a new manager in when you've got a load of really hard games coming up.
Yeah, I was genuinely expecting, if they'd lost in a more convincing way to Leicester, whether they'd bring in big Duncan Ferguson or a bit of an Everton legend to manage ahead of the Merseyside derby and go all heart over head sort of thing, and just sort of steer them through this next run of games. I think they've got City and all sorts coming up in the next few games. Whether they would just trust a caretaker to try and keep damage limitation, I guess, for those few games,
they're
and
then
then
hire
a top manager.
Have to do something quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So once the Merseyside derby finishes, you're all footballed out, right? Until Thursday.
Oh no, there's more. Amazon,
and it's live on Amazon Prime. Yeah, yeah. We have on Thursday. We have Sheffield United versus Newcastle. That is a 7:30 kick-off. Sheffield United, that is the fairy tale.
That really is.
They're sitting up in 7th, unbelievably consistent. They are unbeaten in 7 for a newly promoted side. That is something else. They've drawn 5 of those games. They love a draw, don't they? But they're not scoring too many, but they're not conceding too many. It's just a very, very assured season from them. They don't look out of place at all. No,
they're making it hard work for all of the big sides, and they're getting points from almost every game, and they're quite deservedly right up there amongst the European. They're not far off European places. They've been there or thereabouts, and you just think it's one of those things where you think, newly promoted side, surely they're going to run out of steam at some point, but they don't seem to be. Right?
They haven't really had massive highs. No, they're just sort of constantly 7 out of 10 every week, and that's what you need to be in the Premier League to stay up.
And just to bring it back to Spurs as always,
obviously,
no, but
all roads lead to Spurs.
When they played us when we were at home recently a couple of weeks ago, just went at us though. They've got no fear. They're just coming out of the blocks, just going at big teams straight off. And I use big teams liberally with Spurs at the moment, but they really just come out of the blocks and just go for it. It's they're not playing like a team who've just been promoted or are kind of showing respect in that way, which neither should they. They're getting the results. Go do it.
They've the last 2 defeats came against enormous opponents in the shape of European champions Liverpool and 1973 FA Cup final winners Sunderland AFC in the cup.
Oh, you brought it back to Sunderland.
Enormous. I just wanted to get them in there. We still exist, 11th in League One. Newcastle United. Newcastle United steadily improving under Steve Bruce. They got that draw against City. They beat City last year. They seem to turn up for those big games, but you think that they've got to start winning consistently against the teams around them. They couldn't get past Villa the other night, and you just think they've actually got to start, with Joe Linton, who's not impressing up front, Almiron, who got his first assist for the club eventually, but he still doesn't completely strike confidence into me. They've really got to start beating those teams around them, or teams like Sheffield United who should be around them, if they want to put together a consistent run.
Yeah, I mean, Newcastle's one of those teams where you just think they're a huge club. They've got the huge support, and they shouldn't be where they are at the moment. And you just feel like a game like Sheffield United v Newcastle, you look at that on paper, and especially if you didn't know what you knew about Sheffield United this season, you think, well, that should be a game that Newcastle are winning, right?
Yeah.
And it is, but it doesn't feel like that. They're getting they have got these results here and there, and the 2-2 against Man City is amazing, but they're not hitting the mark where they need to in the games that they need to be winning and getting points from.
Yeah, they've got to win those games like this one, and
then get the draw against Man City, and then that gets you into mid-table and the upper echelons.
But they've got to take the points or deny teams around them from getting the points, rather than just taking a point off City and losing to Sheffield United. So. Yeah, it's a tricky one for them, but hopefully.
But I agree. It does feel like it's getting a little bit better. It's getting better.
For sure. And if you tune in on Amazon on this one, you will see them all with their tops off in December, because that's the way Newcastle rolls. 8:15 kick-off. So once you've watched a half of Sheffield United Newcastle, you can switch over to Arsenal versus Brighton. This is the final game of the week, and Freddie Ljungberg you've got no idea how this is going to pan out in terms of how good a coach he is, but that defence is uncoachable. I mean, Mustafi and Luiz, the chocolate teapots at the back, they cannot be the answer long term. Whether he can limp them through to January before, signing, I don't know, a Boulder, just anything that's more mobile than Mustafi and Luiz.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal, again, coming from a Spurs fan, obviously it's going to sound biased, but I don't think it is. I mean, what's going on? They're now managerless after, with the caretaker, Freddie, there. But, the defensively, it's just... What?
I just think they try to delegate out a bit more. They've gone, recruitment heads and heads of player development and blah, 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 blah. And Emery was there as the coach. Like, simply just stick to the field, stick to the training field. And I know he made mistakes, he set them up incorrectly sometimes, 5 at the back against Southampton, blah, blah, blah. But he was just a very small part of the problem that's gone on there. They've offered him up, like say David Luiz, and not replaced people like Mustafi. They've still got Callum Chambers knocking around. The recruitment teams offered those players up and said to Emery, okay, turn them into a top 4 defence. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. I guess for now, looking at this one, Arsenal, Brighton, thankfully they've got Aubameyang and Lacazette, who will just try to very simply outscore Brighton.
And I think they're going to have to, right? I mean, just look at their results though in the league. I mean, you've got out of the last 5 games, 4 draws, 4 draws and a defeat. So you got a draw against Norwich, and these aren't even draws against big teams. It's draw against Norwich, draw against Southampton. Losing to Leicester quite convincingly, then the draw against Wolves. Obviously Wolves is a better result. Draw against Crystal Palace. They're not, and there's goals. They're conceding goals every time, and you just think that's not the Arsenal that we kind of know, and in my case don't love, but that's not the Arsenal that.
And yet in recent years that's become all too familiar for Arsenal. But
but I mean, it does seem a little bit worse than it has been in the last few seasons when you look at those results.
I hear there's some that Frenchman just got hired by FIFA. Is it Arsene somebody? He could probably do a decent job there. Brighton, and I guess Brighton are an interesting team. They've got Graham Potter signed up to a long-term contract, obviously want to keep him while there's so many managers left, right and centre.
Well, indeed.
They've lost a few in a row, but you're probably going to see them nicely tucked up in the middle of the pack. And like I say, with Arsenal's defence in this way, you could just put anybody, throw them forward.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't bet against Brighton getting a few goals, and then it's just how many are Arsenal going to score, right? Is it going to be 3-2 Arsenal or
prediction
2-0 or
7-5? Yeah.
Normally you look at that and you go, Arsenal at home, surely that's a win, but I don't think so.
I think
Not
so.
this season.
And that is us. And once you get to this point, you've watched so much football, you've maxed out your internet, and that's it. You're done.
You've broken the internet. You've watched half of every game.
You've watched 45 minutes of 10 games. Enjoy. And that rounds us off for the day. I'll be back on Friday with the next instalment of the Football Times podcast. In the meantime, enjoy every game you watch and come to radiotimes.com/sport for all the latest previews, news and views on the latest upcoming sporting events, football and otherwise. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good Christmas.
Bye.
Cheers.